Hello, hi, and welcome. If you're new here, my name is Sarah, and this is Wicked Reading. So I have actually never done an unhaul on this channel, and it's very much due. I'm getting rid of a lot of books. I'm not showing you all of the books I'm getting rid of. I'm just going to share with you guys the books I'm unhauling that I read and decided after reading that I don't want them on my shelves anymore. There's a lot of other books I'm getting rid of that I bought that just don't really fit my current reading tastes, and some other books that I read a long time ago that I just don't feel like I read them recently enough to talk about them really. So I am probably fully unhauling about 60 books, but I'm only going to talk about 25 books in this video. Some of these books, if not all of the books that I'm showing you guys, will go up on my Pango, which is a new thing. So if you're interested in maybe snagging a couple of these books up, they will be there. And then a lot of the other books are going to be donated to my local library. I'm going to use some for the free little library, and that's probably it. Mostly donations after that. So I will sell some, but I'm donating most. So I have two stacks here. There's no rhyme or reason, so let's just talk about the books. So the first one I'm getting rid of, which is kind of very sad, but it is Cackle by Rachel Harrison. I love this cover. I love Rachel Harrison. I did not like this book, but a lot of people do love it. I am definitely an outlier. Just didn't work for me. As much as I love Rachel Harrison, actually her two other books are right here. As much as I love her, I don't want this one on my shelves. So getting rid of that. Then we have We Spread by Ian Reid. Again, another author that I really do love, but I just didn't really like this book. Again, another unpopular opinion because most people do. It was a little bit too ambiguous at the end for me. It was an interesting idea, but I don't love the format of it. I don't know. It just wasn't what I was hoping it would be and didn't really blow me away, and honestly is quite forgettable at this point. Other than like a couple little details that I remember, it really hasn't made that much of an impact, so I'm just going to get rid of this one. I think somebody else will appreciate this story a lot more than me. Then Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. I read this a long time ago. I've read 2 stories by Riley Sager so far. I think this is probably his most popular. At the time that I read it, he's had a couple of releases since I read this one, but at the time that I read this one, this was his most popular. Didn't like it, and then I decided to read his least popular because I thought maybe that's why. Didn't like that one either. I don't think I like Riley Sager. I don't like his characters. His thrillers are his like twists and stuff are just very off the wall, and I don't like them. I don't know. I don't like his stuff. Getting rid of this one. Anyway, this one's another one that I'm kind of sad about because it's such a beautiful book, and that is The Nature of Witches by Rachel Griffin. This is actually the first edition too, so the naked book is so pretty. The naked book is stunning. I'm obsessed. So I'm so sad that I really did not like this book at all. It's a YA, and it read like it. It had so many plot holes. There's like a romance subplot that felt so like unbelievable to me. I had no idea why any of the characters liked any other characters. Like the main character in this was so annoying. I did not like her. So sad to get rid of this one because it is stunning, but it was not a good one for me. Next up is one that's very popular, and that is Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. I didn't like it. I don't like the sci-fi trope that's in it. Had I known, I would not have even wasted my time. The writing also, I didn't think was very, like, it wasn't bad, but I didn't think it was as good as people say it is. So getting rid of this. Next, I have Mothered by Zoya Stage. This one wasn't horrible. This was a 3-star for me. But I just I'm never gonna reread it. And it doesn't spark enough positive feelings for me to keep it, because I do have some 3-star books that I am keeping, but yeah, this one isn't one of them. It has to do with a mother and daughter. And it's during a pandemic with lockdown, and the mother has to move in with the daughter, and the mother's kind of acting weird, and then the daughter's acting weird. It started really strong. I just hated the way that the story went in the second half. I thought it could have just been better. It was teasing at a lot more stuff that I thought would culminate to something better than what it did, and I didn't like the direction it went in, so it ended up being a 3-star for me. I do like this cover. I like the color choices, the contrasting. I like the cover, but that's unfortunately not enough to save it and keep it on my shelves. Then I have We Sold Our Souls by Grady Hendrix. I do really like Grady Hendrix. I just really did not like this one. It's not that I really didn't like it. This is one that I would keep on my shelves, but like I'm just not going to. Like it just was kind of fine and whatever for me. I just like his other books that I've read so much more, so I'd rather have those on my shelves over this one. I think this one just kind of like taints the other ones. This has to do with a metal band, and they break up early in their career, and we're following the singer years later, and she kind of blames one of the band members for breaking up the band, and she thinks something more sinister was going on. So he has since pursued a solo career, and she decides to pursue him and confront him. And there's some other stuff going on in the story. I just didn't really enjoy the main character or the plot, so getting rid of this one. Then I have The Last Wish by Andrzej Sapkowski. I have the illustrated version of this with the red cover, so I'm just gonna get rid of this copy, and that will be the only book that I have in this whole series. This whole series was a very roller coaster ride for me. I enjoyed some of the books, hated the way it ultimately ended. So yeah, I will have a copy of this, the illustrated version, but that's it. I'm not getting any more of the series. So mostly keeping the other one because of the artwork in it. Next is They Drown Our Daughters by Katrina Monroe. It's been a couple years since I read this. I think I read it in 2022. And this is another one that the cover's really pretty. I love the color scheme. The purples, really, really lovely. This story was fine. Honestly, I didn't hate it. It was like a pretty strong 3-star, but it's another one that I'm not going to reread and just hasn't left enough of an impact on me to keep it on my shelves. But this is one that I would recommend to somebody who, you know, thinks it sounds like something they would like. I can't really tell you what it's about. I kind of forget, but it has to do with family lineage. They say it's a part modern gothic, part ghost story that explores the depths of motherhood, identity, and the lengths a woman will go to hold on to both. So I think that that does do a good enough job at summarizing what this book is about. It takes place at a little coastal, like small town with a lighthouse. I did like the atmosphere and I liked the story. The biggest issue I had with this was one of the characters. Just their motivations and then what they did at the end made no sense to me, and that kind of like irritated me. But really, this book wasn't horrible. It's just not memorable enough for me either. Another purple book, and that is Loot by Jennifer Thorne. This is another one that's really not that bad. I gave it 3 stars. It read a little superficial, and it just like didn't pack as much of a punch as I wanted it to. The idea of it sounded really interesting. It's about this small island, very kind of quaint. Everybody knows each other, and every 7 years, 7 people die, no more, no less. It kind of has a little bit of like Midsommar vibes to it, but yeah, it felt a little superficial. It felt a little bit YA at times. It's not. It's adult. Some of the scenes did stand out quite a bit, and I don't know. It was not a horrible read, but again, just like not one I'm going to keep on my shelves either. But it is really pretty. I almost want to keep it on my shelves just because it's purple, and I do really like this cover, but getting rid of it. Next is Mosaic by Catherine McCarthy. This is a little novella that has to do with this woman who gets commissioned to restore a mosaic glass stain mosaic thing in an old church. And she's doing this job, and she's finding weird stuff in the church, and vibes are off, and It gets a little bit weird at the end. This is another one that wasn't horrible, but it just didn't do enough for me either. It felt at the end, like the ending felt like the story was just getting started. So that was a little bit disappointing, and it's just, again, another one that I'm not going to read again and didn't like enough. Next, I have The Girl in 6E by A.R. Tor, or Tori, I'm not quite sure. This is a thriller, I guess, that we follow a cam girl, and one of her clients has some red flags, and yeah, she's like, is a recluse, is that the word? Where she has locked herself in her apartment, 6E, and won't let herself out. And that's kind of like all you know. But this book was just like not for me. So I expected a lot of, you know, like sexually explicit stuff because I knew she was a cam girl. And that stuff was like fine, but it ended up taking up too much of the story. And I think we should have had less of that and more of the thriller portion of the story. I'll just say she does end up leaving her apartment, and I feel like that portion of the story should have taken up more of the book. And then there was some side elements that I did not care about that didn't feel necessary. Next up is A White Horse by Erica T. Worth. This is a book that so many people were giving bad reviews to, and I was like, I'm still gonna try it because maybe I'll like it. I did not like it. I gave it 2 stars. The story premise is that our main character is like this metal listening to Stephen King reading punky woman, I guess, who gets a gift from her cousin, and it is a necklace from her mother who died when she was a baby. And then when she gets this necklace, her mother starts haunting her. But that is like such a minor part of the story. It felt like the character was treating that like not a big deal, which was very strange to me. And there's a lot more family drama, I guess, in the story than I expected. And I didn't like so many of the things in this book. So getting rid of this one. Then I have Lost Souls by Poppy Z. Bright. I DNF'd this book. I'm never going to pick it back up. It has too much erotically written incest and stuff dealing with kids, and I don't like reading that, so I'm not going to. It is like a vampire story, but I read a decent chunk of this, and at the point that I stopped, it felt very much more character focused, and we were kind of just blipping into multiple people's lives, and just all of these people have very, very dark demons pretty much. So yeah, I mean, I don't know where it goes from there. Obviously I did not finish it. Then I have Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. This wasn't horrible at all. I just like don't feel like it really encapsulates my reading taste. It's a 3-star. It was like a high 3-star. Maybe I give it a 3.5. I appreciate the story for what it is. It's a very whimsical, magical fantasy where we follow a main character who is kind of a shitty person, and he dies, and then he goes to this tea shop, which is kind of not portal, but like a destination that he has to go to in order to cross over. Focuses around death and thinking about the life that you lived and regrets that you have and this and that, but I just really didn't vibe with it. I didn't really like the main character. I liked everybody else. There's this kind of like found family aspect to it that I did like, and there were a lot of moments that I did enjoy, and a lot of moments that I appreciated because it brings a kind of whimsical, somewhat positive feel to death, but overall, it just really wasn't my style of story. So it's just like not something I want to keep on my shelves because I just don't feel like it encapsulates me as a reader. So I'm gonna get rid of this one. Another one I'm getting rid of is Somebody's Daughter by Ashley C. Ford. This one, I like feel bad because it's a memoir. I just went into it expecting it to focus on different things than it did. That's not to say anything about the story. The writing itself is beautiful. Ashley Ford is a very good writer, but I picked this up thinking, but knowing, because she does talk about it, but thinking that the story was very much going to focus on her relationship with her father after her father has been in jail for vast majority of her life, or prison rather. He's been in prison for vast majority of his life, and I thought it was going to focus a little bit more on that. And it does talk about it, but it actually focuses a lot more on her relationship with her mother, which is totally fine, but I really wanted to, live through the father situation. So I was hoping to get a little bit more of that out of it. Totally fine story, but I just want to be able to give it to somebody else that might get a little bit more out of it. Next is The Hollow Places by T. Kingfisher, and I went out of my way to get the UK cover because I love it. And I did not love the story. Damn it. So this is another 3-star. Not horrible, but not for me. Let me see what this says it's about. I don't know what's a spoiler for this one. So we follow our main character, Kara, and she ends up working at her like uncle's taxidermy oddity store, which is cool, I guess. She's older. She like just got divorced, I think. So she's kind of like, freshly divorced and living back at home. So she's trying to like she's in a transitional period, trying to figure out who she is as a grown woman in this new life that she's going to be living. So, okay, it says it on here. So she discovers that in the back of the oddities store, it holds portals to countless alternate realities. So that's not a spoiler because it says it right here. Although I know that UK synopsises tend to give out a lot more information than the US synopsis, I've noticed. So yeah, that was like my biggest issue with it. I didn't know if I liked portal stuff or not, and I don't think I do. At least I did not like this one. It was just like really, really difficult for me to figure out what was being described to me. I think I had a very difficult time imagining what was being described. And I am somebody who can typically picture stuff in my mind. I do read a decent amount of fantasy, but this was just a little bit too out there, I guess. And it was a little bit too much. I did not know what was happening in terms of what the like creatures or scenery or anything looked like. I really couldn't get a good picture in my head of that, which isn't like, a total deal breaker, but I also didn't really like the character. I liked the story for a little bit, but then she started feeling very, very immature to me. And then the ultimate ending, like the last like 50 or so pages, got super goofy. And I guess I just didn't expect it to get goofy. I thought it was going to lean more horror, and it just kind of got a little goofy instead. I think if you know that, you might enjoy it more. I just like didn't have the greatest experience, and I'm not gonna like read it again to see if I have a better experience knowing what I know now. So I'm just gonna pass it on. Oh, this one I actually haven't read, but I just had it stacked with my Stephen King. So I have If It Bleeds by Stephen King. I think it's a short story collection. I'm just like not gonna get to it, honestly. That's it. I'm gonna read a couple more Stephen King stories. Like I'm gonna read Misery and maybe a couple of his like older works, but I'm not going to read anything modern Stephen King. I don't know. I'm just not going to. Okay. So there's that. And then one of his older ones that I'm getting rid of that I did read is Geralds Game by Stephen King. I really, really liked the movie. Actually, I originally actually watched the movie and I thought it was really good. It's on Netflix. I did not like reading the story though. Reading the story is a very different experience. And it kind of ruined the solar eclipse that just happened for me. So yeah, I'm not going to hold on to this. But if you're interested, I should say what it's about. We follow this woman who, her and her husband are going through a difficult time. So like, kind of like they might get divorced. And in order to connect again, they decide to go to their vacation home in off season. So nobody else is really there. They decide to go to a vacation home to kind of like spice stuff up, have like a sexy weekend, whatever. And right before they're about to get down and dirty, he has a heart attack and she is handcuffed to the bed and can't do anything about it. He's dead on the floor and she's stuck in handcuffs. So it kind of becomes about her trying to get out of the situation. But in the midst of her being stuck and alone, she ends up rehashing, I guess, a lot of internal trauma, childhood trauma. So check trigger warnings for this, for like childhood trauma stuff. And yeah, so it was a very different experience to read it because you're kind of reading her talking to herself in her head, which sounds good, but the stuff she was talking about, again, is stuff I don't like to read about. So yeah, it was all right, but I actually prefer the movie. So I would say go watch the movie. Next, we have Between Two Fires by Christopher Buehlman. I'm really sad I didn't like this one too because I like this cover a lot. This is actually another one that I just had a very difficult time trying to picture what the fuck was going on. This, I did not realize, is very religious based. So I don't really know anything about religion in general. So I feel like stuff was happening that was very reflective of religious stuff. Like, I don't know if it was doing like the whatever levels of hell. There's like 7 or 9. I don't know. I don't know if it was going through like the 7 deadly sins. I don't know. I feel like a lot of symbolism was happening in the story that I really didn't understand. At the surface, it's like a journey-driven story where we follow a brutal knight, a troubled priest, and a young girl. So yeah, I don't know. I listened to this on audiobook and I don't think that helped. I think maybe if I read it physically, I would have been able to wrap my mind around a little bit more, but I don't know. Do I want to get rid of this one? I don't know now. Everybody talks about how great this is. Like, everybody talks about how amazing this is. Now I'm kind of debating if I should reread this one. I might hold on to this for a little bit longer. Maybe I will reread it. I do love this cover. And again, I went out of my way to get the UK version. I might hold on to this, but it might end up being unhauled very soon as well. This is one I'll donate because it's actually an ARC, and it is Girls Burn Brighter by Shoba Rowe, maybe. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. This is a devastating story. It's not bad at all. It's just another one I'm not going to reread and I'm just going to pass it on. But it is a devastatingly heartbreaking story about 2 women in India that live in very impoverished areas and they just rely on each other a lot for companionship. They're very close friends growing up in this impoverished area and they just go through so much trauma. Check trigger warnings for this one for sure. It is so sad. And they end up getting separated because of, I believe, arranged marriages, that kind of situation. It's been a few years since I read this, so it's not very fresh in my mind. And then they kind of eventually find their way back to each other through other circumstances. But this is a very tough read. It's very emotional, very hard. So it's just not one I'm gonna put myself through again, but it wasn't bad. I think I gave it 4 stars maybe, but I mean, reviewer and star rater Sarah from 4 years ago is different than reviewer and star rater Sarah now. So I don't really know what I'd give it now, but I'm not gonna find out. So I'm gonna pass this along. Okay, just a few more left. Next is Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. Maybe, I'm not totally sure. It's been a long time since I read this. I read it in high school, I think. So it's been like 10 plus years. It takes place at this school and we follow these young people. As the story goes on, it's slowly becoming more and more apparent that something is very different and very off about this school, this boarding school that these kids are at. So this was a really good story, honestly. I really liked this one. But it's just one that I don't think I'm going to reread, although now I'm kind of questioning this one too. I don't think I'm going to reread this, but it's a very good book. I think it's YA. Actually, I don't really know. I think maybe I just read it when I was young, which isn't surprising. Okay, yeah, I don't think it's YA, but we do follow younger people. Yeah, I don't know. I'm getting rid of this one. Another one I am getting rid of is Death in Her Hands by Otessa Moshfegh. I read this last year for an Unhinged Women reading vlog, and Unhinged Women, boy was it. So it is interesting. And I appreciate the story. I gave it 3 stars. It's not horrible, but I also didn't love it, and I'm not going to reread it. It felt very metaphorical, and it's very stream of consciousness with an unreliable narrator. It is about this woman whose husband recently died, and when she is walking in the woods with her dog, she finds a note that says, her name was Magda. Nobody will ever know who killed her. It wasn't me. Here is her dead body. And she looks around and there's no dead body, but then she becomes very, very obsessed with this note and figuring out who Magda was and what happened. But don't get your hopes up. It's not like a mystery or thriller that gets solved. That's just kind of where her thoughts go, and then it increasingly becomes a little bit more unhinged as the story carries on. But you're stuck in this woman's head the whole time, and she's not very reliable. So for me, my problem with this was the line between reality and what was happening in this woman's head was a little bit too blurred for me, to the point that I kind of stopped caring, because I felt like anything I was reading didn't really matter. But in saying that, when I kind of talked about this in the vlog, I felt like this was a big metaphor for the writing process and for storytelling in general. So I really appreciate this story, and I think it's a good one to discuss. I think it'd be a really good book club read, but it's just not one that I want to keep and reread and keep with myself. It's something I would reread if I had a group of people to talk about it with after. It's just like not a book that I want to keep to myself, if that makes any sense. So I'm going to be passing this along. If anybody wants to like start a book club and read it, I'll do it again, but I'm just not going to keep it on my shelves. Then we have Daisy Hates by Jessa Hastings. I'm getting rid of this one. I have a second copy. I have like the big versions, and we can't get the small versions anymore, so I'm just going to hang on to the big ones. So this is pretty much just me getting rid of it because I have a second copy. Not saying I liked this story. This book ended up in my worst books of 2023, so if you watch that, you'll know. But I like the rest of the series so far. So I have to keep at least one version in order to have a complete set. This one I will actually just donate because there's a really embarrassingly drawn picture in here, because I thought I would love this story since I loved Magnolia Parks. So I started annotating it, and I thought I'd be really cute and draw a picture, and it's horrendous and it's so embarrassing I can't even show you. So I'm just gonna put that in a free little library so my face isn't attached to it and I could just pretend it never happened. And then lastly, I'm getting rid of Clown in a Cornfield by Adam Caesar. This is a YA slasher, and we follow our main character Quinn, who moves to a small town, and there's this very obvious contention between the young generation and the older generation of this town. There's a situation that the book opens up with where the young people were having this party outside, and somebody ended up dying at said party, and the older generation kind of blames them for that, and, you know, that whole thing, that whole debate with technology and stuff. So yeah, this was way too on the nose for me. I didn't like the themes. I'm just like over talking about like millennial versus Gen Z versus boomers. Like no thank you. So I did not really like the themes. Everything was very on the nose. Some of the slasher scenes were actually really good, but it just wasn't enough to save the rest of the book for me. It was already pretty tarnished at that point, so I really couldn't enjoy most of the like end of the story where the slashing actually started. I was already annoyed with everything else from the story, but it's a very well liked book and well loved book, so don't let me dissuade you. In fact, buy it from my Pango shop, but yeah, I'm not going to keep it. So hope you guys enjoy it. So that is going to be everything. That is all of the books that I wanted to share with you guys that I'm unhauling. Like I said, I'm unhauling a lot more, and apparently now I'm keeping one, so there's that. As always, thank you so much for spending some of your time with me while I sit down and talk about books. If you haven't yet, please give the video a like, subscribe for future content, turn on the bell notification, all the fun YouTube things that help your girl out, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye!